OnEducation's ISTE coverage is brought to you by TeacherGaming. Mike, we're giving away a 1-year subscription to TeacherGaming.
So TeacherGaming has like 30 games, tons of games. 1 year is probably just enough time to play all of them, hopefully.
Yes. I mean, this is just ridiculous. To enter, all you simply need to do is tweet a pic of your favorite game of all time. It could be a board game, a video game, whatever it is.
Catan.
Yeah, Catan. To @TeacherGaming and tag OnEducationPod. Tag us, and that's it.
That's it.
That's it. Even if you aren't the winner, though, this giveaway, you can still get a 30-day free trial, and all you need to do is go to TeacherGaming.com.
You'd still be a winner to us.
Yes, you are still a winner.
It's been a great day. What's not great is the line for Starbucks. Welcome to our second day of special ISTE coverage here at OnEducation. I am Mike Washburn.
And I'm Glen Irvin. Friends, we have an amazing pod for you today. Again, we'll cover everything that happened at ISTE on Monday and chat about Sunday night's keynote. We'll recap the State of ISTE event and cap it off with our interview with Shawn and Devin Young from Classcraft.
Big day.
Yes, very, very big day and fun day.
So we're here at the hotel. So just in case you hear like people closing doors or elevators, or not elevators, yes, elevators. That's the word for that. This is where we are. We're recapping, and it's been a great day. What's not great is the line for Starbucks. So anyone who's listening that is at ISTE, I'm feeling your pain. It's been brutal. I can't even imagine how hard it is to get a coffee. Did it really need to be that painful?
A $7 coffee. You're gonna wait 45 minutes.
Now we're waiting for a $7 coffee.
But I have a secret technique for you guys. This morning, our Uber driver dropped us off. We don't know where.
Nope.
But we got dropped off, and we ended up in a different part of the McCormick Center, and it was basically
empty.
Its own other building, and it's basically across the street. So if you go down the street level, cross the street, go onto the other side, it's the mirror building, north side, yeah, and just kind of walk straight along, go up the stairs or the escalator, and on your left side you will see Starbucks there, and there's no one there.
So you don't just get like really good education information from us, you get hot tips about where to get your coffee if you are at ISTE. So listen, you can thank us with coffee if you want when you see us. But yeah, if you go to the north building, there's a Starbucks that was virtually empty. And then it's funny because we got the Starbucks at that north building Starbucks, and we came down, went across the road, and went in and up the escalators, and the line for our Starbucks was just ridiculous. So anyways, but it does say actually something about the size of this conference.
Just crazy.
And it's unbelievable. And we were at the State of ISTE press event this morning with Richard, who's in charge of ISTE, and he told us that this is the largest attended conference ever.
By far, he said.
He said by far.
Yep.
With 5,000 over 5,000 session submissions.
So I guess if I got rejected for my session submission, I shouldn't feel too bad. There's 5,000 of them that got accepted there, which is insane. But I mean, it just felt right away from the morning so much different than Sunday.
Well, it was weird yesterday too, though. Like you could tell yesterday. That today was going to be psycho.
Well, yesterday was a lot of people, but today was just uncomfortable.
Insane.
Yes,
totally different.
Yes. There's people just crazy everywhere, and they even had the vendor lounge open, or the vendor area, open today, and it still felt like you were just on top of each other. So what about the podcast? It's doing pretty good.
So listen, guys, you guys are downloading our podcast at breakneck velocity. We're recording here at 5:21 on Monday, and so there are multiple hours left in the day as far as analytics go, but we're 5 times our previous record day already.
Yeah, so we just shattered that one.
So we absolutely trashed our previous record, and we're still not done with today, and we're definitely also not necessarily done with like peak download time for the day, which is usually around 6 or 7 or 8, and then sometimes in the middle of the night. So we can't thank you enough. Please keep sharing, subscribing, rating, and reviewing. It all helps. But we really, I think this says that we're helping also kind of get out the word and share information with people. And hopefully we can keep doing that. And it's been really fun so far, and we're just going to keep going. We are very tired, but
we're doing it.
Very motivated. And so
we got this.
Yeah. So it's been fun. When we come back, we will recap a bit of the day yesterday, and Glen will take us through a bit of Sunday night's keynote that we didn't have time to talk about yesterday. So stay tuned.
OnEducation is brought to you by Audible. Mike, what have you been reading lately? And I suppose you're kind of like me, where you have quite a few books that you have on your list.
I have too many books on my list. I have probably about 40 audiobooks on my queue, and between listening to podcasts and audiobooks, I am well stocked. Lots of cool books are on Audible, hundreds and thousands of titles, and you can get your own audiobook download for free if you go to audibletrial.com/oneducation. That's audibletrial.com/oneducation, and you can get a free audiobook download. You should go do that, like, right now. All right, welcome back to the show. First thing in the morning, this morning, we had a chance to sit down and hear from Joseph South and Richard and all of the executives at ISTE, and we had a really good chance to hear their thoughts on a bunch of things. I'm going to kind of go through some of the big points for people who aren't here, or, I mean, there wasn't a lot of people in the room, so, I mean, compared to how many people are at the conference. So some of this stuff needs to be shared. So one of the there's a couple really cool takeaways that I had from it. One was this idea of redefining digital citizenship. They almost flat out said, I think we've been doing this wrong, which was super interesting to just flat out say that, because, they are, for all intents and purposes, the educational oversight kind of area or department for educational technology. And this struck me when he said that digital citizenship should be a list of do's, not a list of don'ts. I thought that was a really cool phrase, the idea that, to frame it in a positive in terms of action and emotion and stuff like that, instead of, don't give your name to strangers and don't do this and don't do that. Framing it as a positive was probably a really cool takeaway from that.
And those were, what he was also saying is that that's great that we are teaching those things, but we need to move beyond that. Mm-hmm. That's just one component of what digital citizenship should be.
Absolutely. New rating and review system for apps and tools. So they're creating a whole system for apps and websites and tools and devices to get rated by experts. Teachers can ask questions and get answers, which, shockingly isn't as easy as it should be. And meaningful feedback about tools that is specific to educators. So none of this generic, Amazon reviews and reviews in the App Store and stuff like that. This is, how are you going to use it as a teacher? How are teachers going to be impacted by it? How are they going to use it? And are you going to like it as a teacher or not? I use a lot. I can't remember the number. Do you remember the number that like Joseph said?
80 tools or something that a
something
school
like
has.
That.
Yeah, 80 different apps that are in a school are going on all at the same time. Which I honestly, I didn't think that was that big of a number. I thought it'd be even higher than that.
Right.
Just because there's so many different things, and I think they were saying it as a negative. As far as like, there's a bunch of stuff that we're using that's not that good. Mm-hmm. But there was a lot. I guess 80 is quite a bit. Though, we use a lot of different tools for a lot of different purposes.
Yeah,
you know?
But the idea that also that unless you're in this, unless you're doing it every day, you're not an expert, you need to go and get some trusted advice from someone, and there's a lot of noise. The signal to noise ratio in terms of this stuff is pretty low. Or pretty high. I don't know how signal to noise ratio actually works, I guess. but there's a lot of noise and not a lot of signal. That's how you say it. And so hopefully this gives people who aren't living in this world every day a place to go and look and understand what's good and what will really work, and get that information from people who actually teach.
Yeah, and so what was interesting about that too, when you wrote that and I was listening to him speak about this specifically, is one of my coworkers, Paul Schlangen. Hey Paul, how's it going? He actually created a tool that does this, and he was doing it specifically for this purpose, just basically to curate tools for teachers. So if you were looking for a presentation tool, what do those look like, and how many stars does Paul give that tool? Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
So is it like on the low end of good presentation tools, or is it on the high end, like something you should really be using? And then he would give a little blurb about each one of them, and he has hundreds of tools that he's curated in this. It's basically his own little Amazon thing, and he's done it with an Excel spreadsheet. And you click drop down menus, super easy for the teacher to use on the user side. But on his side, it's complex stuff. But if they have this, if that's what this ends up being, that's fantastic.
100%.
Yes.
One of the cool things they mentioned, in addition to the other stuff, is this idea that they're going to start to create some smaller events. ISTE's huge. The conference is huge and sprawling. And one of the things that they really mentioned was that the information that people get at this conference is pretty surface. We've talked about that, I think, a little bit, maybe off air, but I remember us talking about. And so they're gonna start to focus on these other smaller events that they can put on that take deeper dives into specific things. Like there's this No Fear coding lab that they're going to have happen in Detroit, and a digital leadership summit that I think they said was going to happen in California. So there's these new events, smaller events that take deeper dives than an ISTE session can generally get you, which I think is valuable. It's important.
Absolutely. Yes, and it's tough for people to come to this event. And we've talked about that for a multitude of reasons, but number one is expense. Right. But number two is how much value are you getting out of being here, and hopefully people are getting a lot of value. But these smaller events probably are specific to your interests, in this case, whatever it might be.
Exactly. Big news, probably the biggest news, or at least the biggest news, the way that they framed it, was just announced, I believe today, that they are releasing what's called ISTE, which is professional development. So ISTE is taking on the responsibility for deep, meaningful professional development on themselves, delivering courses that you can take. It is powered by the D2L platform. Personalized learning is a course. I saw digital citizenship. There are 11 courses being offered. They start in and around July 15, 16, from what I looked, somewhere around mid-July. And some of them are kind of done in partnership with partners, brands, companies, whatever. 5 partners for 6 of the courses, they said, but there's 11 courses total. I think this is awesome. I think this is rad for people who want to get professional development from kind of a pretty trusted source.
What I should have asked the question when we had a question part at the end of this entire session is, how much does it cost? And I'm supposing that because of the sponsorships, the cost is really low.
Maybe a couple $100.
That's too much.
Is it too much?
Yes, but I'm just saying, like that, and so there's a barrier there. It depends upon how much that actually costs for those specific courses, and whether or not they're accredited So some of our contracts, you have to get things from an accredited university. So it would be interesting to see how they delve it out. And I think it's coming out in September or something like that, right? That's what they said, September in the fall.
Well, no, the courses are being delivered in mid-July. They start in July.
Mid-July. Okay.
So it's soon. So, I mean, maybe we can get that answer for you next session. The last thing we're going to talk about is the ISTE Educator Certification. So, I mean, companies and brands, a lot of them have certifications, Google, Apple, Microsoft, you name it. There's, Flipgrid ambassadors, Schoology ambassadors. Everyone has a certification program. But I feel like this one maybe is a little bit different. Because, again, I keep coming back to this idea that ISTE is kind of the source. It's the overseeing body, for lack of better words, of educational technology. And so I would hope that carries some weight. It's going to be, they said it's going to be vendor neutral. You're going to be able to do whatever you do to earn your certification in whatever way is best for you. And whoever's assessing this is going to be capable of assessing it no matter what the platform or tools or whatever you use is. I can't see this being a bad thing. This is a good thing too.
So they're submitting portfolios, it says there?
I mean, I guess so. Yeah. I don't know really. They didn't really take it. Like, they didn't really go into
say how you're going to go about getting ISTE certified. Yeah,
right.
That should be an interesting process. It'd be interesting for us to look into it and see what does it actually take to become ISTE. I would imagine it would be a rigorous process.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we'll see though.
Yeah. So let's go through the keynote from Sunday night. You wrote notes. You went crazy on notes. I listened. You were writing notes. I appreciated that. So there's lots of notes, and let's go through it. There are some super interesting things. It was great.
Yes. So the Sunday night keynote was David Eagleman, and he is a author, a professor, a speaker, as it says here, an inventor. He had a lot of expertise, especially on brain research. That's what I was really fascinated with. And he had a lot of really good points that I wrote down here. And some of the things that were really close to home for me was, number one, the inordinate amount of diagnosis of ADHD for our students that are coming of these generations that are coming up, and how he believes that it is not ADHD,
right.
And instead he actually was showing us basically the way that their brain patterns are just happen to be different than the way our brain patterns developed when we grew up, and that's because of technology. He also talked about the benefits of video games and what they can teach us about engagement and learning. He did some descriptions, some specific examples about how they gamified content for medical students and how successful that actually was. The one that I thought was interesting was this sandboxing concept. Did you see that, Mike?
Right.
I don't know, see that. But basically, what he was saying is, if you don't know what that's why I kind of like Minecraft or just those types of games or whatever it might be. But the concept of sandboxing would be that part of your class would be set around the thing of making sure that kids get to play around with whatever it is, the concepts.
Unstructured play.
A structured play, but also playing around, like, for example, a specific assignments, whatever it might be, but there's zero consequences to them experimenting, and it's okay to fail, basically, those kinds of things. And creating that type of atmosphere within your classroom, which he referred to as sandboxing, playing with the ideas with no consequences. So I really enjoyed that section too. Any things that you were really fascinated with a bunch of his super in-depth language, his words.
Well, I mean, he talked a lot about the science of the brain and how our brains are literally changing, and our brains are different in terms of the way that the synapses are formed compared to, like, us compared to our parents and us compared to our kids. Mm-hmm. And these are formed based on our environment. And, it's not, like you said, it's not ADHD. It's that their brains function differently.
Yes.
And so he got a really big applause from that too, because I think that educators in particular have a really strong sense that ADHD is overdiagnosed, especially people who work in technology have a strong sense of this because of the nature of technology being very like fast and moving and you know, this and then this and then this and then this and I don't know if you have it in the notes, but this idea of on-demand learning as opposed to previous methods of the way that kids gathered information. This idea that, you know, nowadays when you want to know something, you go and you look it up instantly, and you can almost always get an answer.
Yes.
And we've never lived in an era of history where that was possible. And so that idea that our brains do not have to have the functionality to have a slow burn discovery process because of the way that we gather information, and that leaves us room for other things. It leaves us. He framed it as an opportunity,
yes,
as opposed to a detriment.
Exactly,
and that's the difference. Where, you know, you get the older people, kids these days don't know how to think for themselves or whatever, right? And it's ridiculous, you know, because they're using the tools they have to do the things that they want to do in the way that they know how to do them, because that's the way that they live.
Yes.
And that's not a bad thing. It's just the way it is. It's not going to go back. Like, we're not reverting.
No.
So let's learn how to live with it the way it is now.
Yeah.
Instead of just keep on complaining about...
Well, and not even just complaining about it, because that is, a lot of people complain, but basically he was saying that actually there's a lot of advantages to the way that they've actually developed their synapses, and he called it cognitive flexibility. And he was talking about, and this also got a lot of applause, that's super important for kids to practice creativity.
Yeah.
And that actually builds. He was showing what happens when you play, for example, a violin or a piano, or whatever it might be, or even playing a video game, that there's specific things that are being developed in your neural pathways. It just creates more of them, and how it's going to be so important in our future economies for us to be more creative. That's it. He said creativity is going to be at the center of all economics. How creative ideas that you can come up with that a computer can't do. And I really loved his focus on that. People were applauding for that, and I thought that was awesome.
The whole thing was great. I loved the framing. I loved that it was framed in a positive light instead of this negative thing that it's constantly framed in. I think that's it. I think that we covered it all. It was really great. When we come back, we're going to talk to Shawn and Devin Young from Classcraft. This is a great discussion. Stay tuned.
Friends, On Podcast Media is getting set to launch not one, but 2 new podcasts this summer. And we're excited to tell you about the first one, On Politics. On Politics is hosted by politician, professor, and human rights lawyer Craig Scott. On Politics will take deep dives into policy and politics. You definitely come away learning something every week. To stay up to date with On Politics, follow the show's Twitter account, @OnPoliticsPod.
All right, welcome back to the podcast. We are here with Classcraft's Shawn and Devin Young. Thanks for joining us, guys. This is
Absolutely.
rad.
So, for our audience that's haven't ever been exposed to Classcraft, or maybe don't know anything about gamification, anything, how would you describe your product to them?
Yeah, so I think that Classcraft is looking at engagement basically in school. You know, a lot of products are helping with engagement and all this kind of stuff. We're really trying to address it at a systems level. And so if you think of there being an SIS in school where you put your grades and your attendance and that kind of stuff, and then you have an LMS where you kind of put in your homework and manage your classrooms, we're kind of the layer on top of that manages engagement.
That's
and
awesome.
So we integrate with Google Classroom and Microsoft, and there's going to be other SISs down the line that kind of come in, or LMSs I should say, that come into play. But the idea is that we really gamify the experience in, say, Google Classroom. So when you're handing homework, you're getting points. You're getting things handed on time, you're getting points. And then we're also doing a lot of stuff on the behavioral level and with personalized learning within Classcraft. And then we have an API, and we partner with content partners like Discovery, Newsela, Breakout EDU, and then platforms as well, so you can start getting points. So we just announced today, actually, a partnership with LRNG, which is an organization in Chicago that does micro-credentials and stuff, and they're a platform partner where they get points for doing things in LRNG back to Classcraft.
That's amazing.
And so, so really the idea is just to turn the whole school year into a game for students, and then use gaming principles in the classroom that have been working in games for a really long time to make games engaging, but how do we sort of use that for school? So.
That's awesome. So I work specifically, I'm an ed tech coach with high school teachers, and a lot of them are very hesitant anytime you mention the word even game or actually let's go backtrack to fun. They like start backing away from anything that's related to that, especially like this. Like, so we're talking about this product, and they're hesitant to use maybe this kind of product with high school students or older students. What kind of feedback have you guys had from like customers, or what type of customer base do you usually have? Because some people are like, oh, this is an elementary kind of thing, to be able to use only with elementary students.
It's interesting that you should ask that, Glenn, because this is, for the listeners, this is Shawn. I was an educator for 10 years as a teacher of high school physics, and I actually built Classcraft in my own classroom. So when we're saying, oh, it's for middle school, well, it was designed and built in a high school. And the reality is that there's no age for the psychological drives that foster motivation in video games. Things like, empowerment, competency, relatedness. These are things that drive an entire gaming industry, and that's why games are so motivating and engaging. And really what we're doing is applying that psychology to foster intrinsic motivation in learners, and that doesn't have an age group.
Yeah.
And so, I think that the when we see which types of teachers are using Classcraft the most, there's a lot of middle school teachers. I think that's just they're more open to it.
Sure.
But it works just as effectively with older groups of kids. And I think that one of my favorite anecdotes from that to just paint that picture is I had a student one morning. It was a Friday morning. He comes up to me. This student is 280 pounds. He's 17. He's got a bigger beard than I have. He's on the football team. He's like, Shawn, I need 5 gold pieces today. What do I have to do? I'm like, why? He's like, well, I've been saving up all week for my bear helmet, and I really want it for the weekend. And that stuff is not. It's about play. It's not about age. It's about our relatedness to play and how we can bring that into the school world.
Yeah. And I wanted to make sure I asked that because a lot of times right away people deflect, as far as when you bring those kinds of things up. The other question I had was, I know that, and I'm not sure how new it is, but I know that Steve Isaacs has shown me a couple things, and Matthew Farber, who I'm big fans of, have shown me things about, you guys have some quest-based learning kind of embedding, I don't know how to say it, like threads or routes or whatever might be branching. And so we're big fans of Dr. Haskell, Chris Haskell, and quest-based learning. And how have you guys incorporated that aspect into Classcraft?
Yeah, I think that ultimately, and sort of to riff off of what Shawn was saying, is that we really believe that the teacher is kind of their own mini entrepreneur in the classroom, and they should be able to, set it up the way that they want to. And so Classcraft really is a set of tools. It's like a toolbox of gaming that you can apply to the classroom.
That's
and
really
so
cool.
When you think about how does that apply to curriculum, which was kind of the conversation internally, it's quests. It has to become sort of this choose your own adventure sort of experience. And so what we're doing really is Quest is a personalized learning authoring tool, right? So teachers can create their own personalized learning tracks. It starts differentiating based on a student's level of mastery. And they can take their existing lessons that they've got and then just sort of bring them into the Quest engine and then start mapping the lessons together. What's cool for us is that we start taking narrative and wrapping it around.
That's awesome.
Right? And
yes.
so then a grade 6 math module isn't here's some stuff and we're going to go through it. It's this is the new quest that starts this week. You got into this valley, and now there's this castle, and there's these people that are like locked up in this dungeon. And the way that you do that is you do algebra. and so then you kind of go through the algebra and you hand in this stuff, and you're getting points for handing things like on time or whatever. And then the teacher decides, did they master it or not? Yes or no? And then based on the yes or no, a different door will open. So if you got it, you go to the advanced thing, and you're racing through the mountains with the prisoners, and you're escaping the bad guys. And if you didn't, then you're in the woods recruiting bandits. And so it kind of changes the story. What's interesting is that in games, there's this concept called the fog of war. And so you don't see anything other than what you've kind of been able to see within eyesight. And so we use that from the student side. So from the teacher side, there's this map with all these different things, but the student is only seeing what they've unlocked, and so there's no stigma about like, I'm on the remedial path and now I got to do all this extra homework and it feels terrible. It's, no, my story brought me into the woods and there's bandits. Like, okay, cool, what happens next? Let's keep going, you know? And so I think, addressing motivation on a bunch of different levels, like all the storytelling stuff is really key, and we're really keen to go deeper into that this year. And I think that's why we binge watch TV shows. That's why we play games on our phones. That's what school should feel like. Is like, I want to keep going. 100%. I want to keep going. I want to keep going.
Yes.
So,
if I just may add to that, one of the things that we've and we're announcing it right now for ISTE, we just launched the Quest Marketplace. So teachers are creating these quest lines, these storylines, this curriculum. It's all standard aligned, and they can push it now to this like Netflix type of experience in Classcraft. So you can discover and search other teachers' quests.
Nice. And build them into your thing.
Yeah, you can bring them in, you can change them, remix them, and then republish them. So it's a very like collaborative like approach to like. It's basically the world's first, open education gamified curriculum, storehouse
platform.
And we ran really fast to be able to launch it for ISTE, and we've just launched it in the last 2 days. And there's already 200 quests that have been submitted by teachers.
We have Steve Isaacs, who was like, we do a quest of the month, and so he was the first one, and we drew him into the platform.
Yeah, he now has a Classcraft. He's
like drawn into Classcraft.
We're going to talk about that.
So actually, speaking of quests, someone told me once. I played WoW through like all of my college life.
Same.
So I had heard that you guys were big WoW guys. So I wanted to ask about World of Warcraft, because it seems like there's a lot of connection. Like when you look at Classcraft, it's obvious. Mm-hmm. So not only do I want to talk about how WoW influenced how this is built, but also what maybe other. So you talked about Fog of War, and I almost wanted to jump in and say like Civilization is a classic Fog of War game, right? But also these Warhammer games and StarCraft, right? Yeah. Classic Fog of War games where that's built in. What other games maybe influence? So talk about WoW, because I want to talk about WoW, but also talk about how maybe some other games influence some of this too.
I was the WoW guy, so I'll talk about that piece. So I went through college playing WoW as well, and Burning Crusade. That's when I started.
Right.
When it took over my life. Right. But one of the things that's really powerful in a game like WoW and other MMORPGs, but WoW's really good at it, is it really forces you to collaborate. Like when you're going through an instance in WoW, everybody has a job, and you got to do your job. Yeah. And so you've got your tank class, which is like the warrior. You've got your DPS class, which is the mage, and then you've got your support class, which is the healer. And that's really like that like triangle of like interdependency between students. Well, and in Classcraft it's between students, and in Warcraft it's between players. Really creates like the best collaboration you've ever seen, right? Mm-hmm. You're taking orders, you're giving orders, you know what your job is, and if at any point one of the like players falls in, like your instance run is over, right? And so like you're really codependent in terms of success. And when we built Classcraft, the idea was like let's like build real meaningful collaboration in the classroom. Let's make these students interdependent with their different character types. And in Classcraft there's this idea like when you fall in battle, like it affects your whole team. That's the equivalent of like wiping in a raid in World of Warcraft, right? And so like the team mechanics in those games are just incredible. Since then we've gone on to like look at Devin's done a ton of research on like other games and like interfaces and all kinds of stuff. Maybe you want to talk about those.
I think that like you pick up pieces from everything, right? Like I spent like 3 years, I think. I don't know how much money I spent on mobile games, but like I'm like just how's it working? What's the thing? Figure it out. Okay, next thing. And I think that we're doing a Questathon event tomorrow with some guests and stuff.
Yeah,
and
definitely talk about that.
And so, unfortunately, it's sold out. But one of the people that we're bringing out is this author called Yu-Kai Chu, and he wrote a book on what's called the Octalysis Framework, and it's basically he's analyzed a ton of video games, and he's figured out what are the drivers for engagement and all this kind of stuff, and he divides them into white hat and black hat, and like how certain things will stress you out in a game but ultimately burn you out after a while or not. And so that's kind of informed our game design at this point, where it's like it's a lot of we're choosing white hat stuff, which takes longer to sort of get into and that kind of stuff, but creates persistent engagement basically. And because we're making something that like it's a game that you play over the school year, right? Like it's not, you're not going to do this for 2 hours and put it down and whatever, and then you're like living in this game, so it better like feel good. And so anyway, so there's a lot of stuff around that, and I think that like some of those core mechanics that you're talking about, Shawn, in terms of like, you know, collaboration and all that kind of stuff, like when you get deeper into it and you start, like, we get asked every week to pit students against each other so they can fight.
PvP is like
we say no every week, and it's because like if there's a leaderboard, then the person at the top who's winning is feeling awesome, and the person at the bottom isn't. And that's the person who needs the most help.
You're
and
trying to keep it
you're
as
squishing
egalitarian
them
as
under this
possible,
thing, and
Yeah.
it's like, what are we doing? And so for us, it's like, well, the other side is collaboration. And so if we create teams where there's strong and weak people, and everybody's, we have boss battles where you like try to beat the boss, and the whole class is trying to overcome a common obstacle. That's a different experience than fighting each other. And so anyways, a lot of those game mechanics sort of come from just doing a bunch of research and trying to understand what's working or not.
Yeah, that's awesome. So big question is always, how much does Classcraft cost?
So Classcraft has a bunch of features. It's now has become like an ecosystem. The behavior management part for teachers is free, so they can just go and create a free account and use that, and they can level up their students, give them points for whatever they want. The full premium features on the teacher side is $96 a year. And that unlocks like the quests and like a ton of gear, like a whole bunch of other features. And then the school pricing varies it becomes a per student price at that point, because like we have a school product. Like we're talking a lot about the like teacher product here of like what's the classroom experience, what's the engagement experience for students, but like we've worked in education. What we want to do is build value for all the stakeholders. So for kids, it's like school becomes fun and meaningful. For teachers, it's like I get to manage my classroom in a streamlined way that is really great. For parents, they can be part of the game. They can get points at home. So I get informed, but I get to be part of what's going on at school. But for administrators, what we're doing is aggregating the behavioral data that's coming in Classcraft. So like this student was empathetic and got 100 points, or this student handed in their homework on time, and building all of that up into a school climate index. And so we're actually able to measure school climate in real time using the game data.
Wow. And so that's so important.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. And in today's like reality of like school violence and like, you know, all these like social emotional learning, all these like different initiatives that we want to do to like, we need data. And administrators don't have that data. The behavioral data they have is like, referrals, it's suspensions, it's anecdotal. Or it's like it's the 10% kids. What about 90% of those other kids? Like how are they doing? And Classcraft allows us to like report that to schools, and then that's a per student cost at that level.
Okay, that's awesome. I was just thinking about that district level where an admin can't be in every classroom all at once. But that's exactly what you guys are doing.
Yeah,
is if you had this school wide, you're collecting all this data constantly and being able to then gauge your professional development. What do you actually need to be focusing on? Where are kids at? What are they actually doing?
Exactly.
Yeah, super awesome. And then how can our audience learn more about Classcraft?
We're at booth 970. Come and see us.
Okay.
That's easy.
We're at the EdTech Karaoke. We're sponsoring tomorrow. Come and see us. We have a website, classcraft.com. You can definitely go there. We're on Twitter at ClasscraftGame. Shawn is _Shawn Young _ and I'm Young Devin. And yeah, I think that we have a blog. We're releasing all kinds of content about this stuff on a regular basis. We're doing webinars every month. We're incredibly engaged in terms of just, I think that there's the work that we're doing as Classcraft, and then there's also just like a very fundamental belief in games and education, and it being like we grow up playing with each other. That's how we learn, guys. Our brains
100%.
are hardwired for this stuff. It is how like school's going to evolve if it's us or someone else. And we just really think that like more and more when you think about the future that our kids are going to live in, we don't understand what it is. We don't understand what the job market looks like with AI and genetics and nanotechnology and you name it. And so we've got to use these tools now. Like we've got to prep kids for what's coming because it's going to be really different. So anyways, we're pretty passionate about it.
Awesome. That was a great
guys.
interview. Thank you guys.
Thanks for joining us.
Absolutely.
Yes.
OnEducation is an on-podcast media production. My name is Mike Washburn. My co-host is Glen Irvin. You can get in touch with us or ask us questions to answer on air by visiting our website, oneducationpodcast.com. You can tweet us at OnEducationPod. Glen is at Spanish on Twitter. I can be found on Twitter at Mr. Washburn. Our sound engineer is Jake Codeweiss. He's on Twitter at JK Radio. You can find us on Facebook by visiting facebook.com/oneducationpod. If you're enjoying the show and think others would too, we would be honored if you shared it with them. Please leave us a rating or review in Apple Podcasts or the Google Play Store. When you leave a rating, it gives our rankings a boost. This helps others discover the show. We want to thank our presenting sponsor, Schoology, for supporting us. Check out Schoology.com to learn how they can help you advance what's possible. Thanks as always for listening. Stay awesome. See you soon.